The fog at Big Sur felt expensive. It clung to the cliffs like a cashmere wrap, hiding the drop to the ocean below. I stood at the velvet rope, my name on the tip of my tongue, expecting the usual nod of recognition. I was the bride's sister after all. But the coordinator didn't nod. She flinched. She looked down at her iPad, then up at me with a gaze heavy with professional pity. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, leaning in so the influencers behind me wouldn't hear. "Eva personally scrubbed your name an hour ago. She said the venue is strictly over capacity." I wasn't just forgotten. I was erased. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I stepped away from the entrance, my heels sinking slightly into the damp earth. A group of tech executives brushed past me, their laughter loud and confident, smelling of sandalwood and venture capital money. I felt a flush of heat crawl up my neck. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was the specific hollow shame of being told you don't belong in a place you paid for. I pulled my phone from my clutch. My hand was steady but my chest felt like it was caving in. I dialed Eva. She answered on the second ring and the background noise was a wall of sound, champagne corks popping, hairdryers whining, and the high-pitched chatter of her glam squad. "Riley? Why are you calling me? I'm literally about to get into my dress." Her voice was breathless, annoyed like I was a telemarketer interrupting a heart surgery. "I'm at the gate, Eva. They're saying I'm not on the list." There was a pause. Not a guilty pause. A calculated one. "Right. Look, Riley, I was going to text you. We really curated the vibe for today. And honestly, you're a brand risk. A brand risk." I stared at the fog swirling around the cliff edge. "I'm your sister. You're a corporate drone, Riley. You're wearing a blazer, aren't you?" I can hear the blazer through the phone. It clashes with the aesthetic. We have the founders of Zenith and Arrow here. I can't have you standing around looking like you're about to audit them. It makes us look low rent. Just go home. I'm actually doing you a favor. You'd look so out of place." The line went dead before I could respond. I lowered the phone looking at the screen. Low rent. Out of place. I walked back to my rental car, a sensible sedan parked between a fleet of matte black SUVs and vintage convertibles. I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. For a moment I just breathed, trying to regulate the spike of adrenaline in my blood. I thought about the last 6 months. While Eva was posting engagement photos and tagging vendors, I was pulling 80-hour weeks in boardrooms that smelled of stale coffee and fear. I was executing complex mergers and acquisitions for global conglomerates. My work required a level of intellect and endurance that Eva couldn't even conceptualize. I lived on 4 hours of sleep and sheer will. My boring corporate job had quietly funded the down payments, the bailouts, and the safety nets that allowed my family to play pretend. I was the engine of their lifestyle and they treated me like the spare tire. For years I told myself this was just her personality. I told myself Eva was just high maintenance, a perfectionist, a little dramatic. That is the trap of normalized cruelty. You spend so long adjusting your own reality to accommodate someone else's dysfunction that you stop seeing it as abuse. You start thinking of it as weather. Just something you have to dress for and endure. I had conditioned myself to believe that absorbing her insults was my duty as the older, stronger sister. I thought my resilience was a virtue. But sitting there in the silence of my car, looking at the fog obscuring the resort where my family was celebrating without me, the weather finally cleared. It wasn't a quirk. It wasn't a vibe. It was a choice. She chose to humiliate me because she valued an aesthetic over my dignity. She chose to erase me because my competence made her feel insecure. I looked at the passenger seat. Sitting there was a navy blue velvet portfolio. Heavy. Expensive. Inside was the wedding gift I had agonized over. I reached over and touched the soft fabric. It wasn't a toaster. It wasn't a check. I didn't start the car. Instead I opened the door. I wasn't going to leave. Not yet. I had one last delivery to make. I grabbed the portfolio from the passenger seat. The velvet felt cool against my palm, a heavy, tangible anchor in a world that felt increasingly like mist. I walked back toward the reception area, moving with the practiced invisibility of someone who has spent a lifetime being overlooked. The staff was too busy arranging tiered trays of oysters and pouring vintage champagne to notice a woman in a blazer slipping past the periphery. The gift table was already overflowing. It was a mountain of silver-wrapped boxes, crystal vases, and envelopes stuffed with checks from investors who viewed this wedding as a networking expense. I found a small empty space near the center and placed the navy portfolio down. It didn't look like much compared to the towering displays of wealth around it. It was understated, quiet, just like the woman who bought it. Inside that portfolio wasn't a sentimental letter or a piece of art. It was the deed of trust to the villa at Malibu Point. $5.5 million of prime oceanfront real estate. It was the ancestral home of Tiago's family, the symbol of their tech dynasty, the place where they had hosted summer galas for 3 generations. It was also the property they had quietly lost to foreclosure 3 months ago. while Eva was busy selecting floral arrangements and Tiago was pretending his startup wasn't hemorrhaging cash. His father, Joseph, had been on the brink of public ruin. The tech empire was insolvent. The banks were circling. They were going to seize the villa, and with it, the last shred of the family's reputation. I found out because I read the foreclosure filings. That's what I do. I read the fine print that other people ignore. I didn't tell Eva. I didn't tell my parents. I knew they would just panic or worse blame me for knowing. Instead, I used my annual bonus, the one I earned by closing a hostile takeover that made the front page of the Financial Times, and I bought the debt. I created a shell company, negotiated with the bank and secured the property. I saved their legacy before the public even knew it was in danger. My plan had been simple. I was going to give it back to them today. A clean slate. A wedding gift that said, I see you, I saved you, and I love you enough not to take credit for it. I looked at the portfolio one last time. It sat there, a silent testament to 80-hour workweeks and sleepless nights. Then I turned around and walked away. The gravel crunched under my heels, a satisfying final sound. I got back into my car and started the engine. As I navigated the winding roads leading away from the resort, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a silent partner who had just dissolved the partnership. I drove north, the coastline blurring past me. About an hour later, my phone buzzed against the center console. Then again. And again. A notification popped up on the screen. It was a voicemail from Eva. I pulled over at a scenic overlook. The Pacific Ocean stretched out below, vast and indifferent. I turned off the engine and picked up the phone. My hand hovered over the play button. I expected an apology. Maybe she had realized her mistake. Maybe someone had told her I was gone. I pressed play. Eva's voice filled the car, but she wasn't crying. She was laughing. It was a high, brittle sound, accompanied by the clinking of glass and the murmur of a party in full swing. Riley, oh my God, she said, breathless with amusement. I just opened your, whatever this is. The portfolio? Is this a joke? It's a vision board, right? Like a manifestation thing? I stared at the dashboard. She was holding the deed to a $5.5 million property, and her brain couldn't even process it as reality. To her it was a prop. She continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Look, it's cute that you went to all this trouble to print out fake legal documents, but it's kind of embarrassing. You can barely afford your studio apartment, Riley. Stop trying to look rich. It ruins the aesthetic. I'm going to throw this out before anyone sees it and thinks you're having a breakdown. Seriously, get help. The line clicked dead. I sat there for a long time listening to the wind buffet the car. The sadness I had been holding on to, the little girl inside me who just wanted her big sister to be proud, finally curled up and died. In its place, something else woke up. It was the version of me that walked into boardrooms full of men who thought I was the secretary and left with their companies in my pocket. For years, I had let my family define my worth based on their shallow metrics. I let them treat me like a support beam, essential for holding up the structure but meant to be hidden behind the drywall. I thought if I just worked harder, if I was just more useful, more generous, eventually they would peel back the paint and see the steel underneath. But they didn't want steel. They wanted decoration. Eva didn't reject the gift because she hated it. She rejected it because her worldview couldn't accommodate a reality where the boring sister was the powerful one. Her ego required me to be small so she could feel big. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dimming light. I logged into my secure work email. My fingers flew across the keys, familiar and precise. I pulled up the transfer order for the Malibu property. The deed hadn't been recorded yet. It was sitting in escrow, waiting for the final countersignature, my signature. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt clinical. This was no longer a family matter. It was a divestiture of a non-performing asset. I drafted a new email to the trustee. Cancel the transfer of deed to Eva and Tiago. The gift has been rejected by the recipient. Initiate donation protocol B immediately. I hit send. The swoosh sound was softer than a gavel, but it carried the same weight. I closed the laptop. Below me, the waves crashed against the rocks, breaking themselves apart over and over again. I wasn't going to break anymore. I put the car in drive and merged back onto the highway, leaving the scenic overlook and my family in the rearview mirror. While I was merging onto the highway, putting miles of asphalt between me and the people who shared my DNA, the party at the resort was hitting its peak. I wasn't there to see it, but I know exactly how it unfolded. I know because panic has a way of clarifying the details later. Joseph, the father of the groom, the patriarch of a tech dynasty that was currently running on fumes and credit, was wandering the periphery of the reception. He wasn't drinking. He couldn't afford to get sloppy. He was likely scanning the crowd, hoping to corner a venture capitalist near the open bar, desperate to secure a bridge loan before the bank seized everything he owned on Monday morning. He didn't know I had already fixed it. He didn't know the villa, his family's crown jewel, was safe. Or at least it had been safe until 10 minutes ago. He walked past the gift table. It was a chaotic display of silver and gold, a shrine to Eva's materialism. And there, shoved to the edge like a piece of trash, was the navy blue velvet portfolio. Eva had tossed it aside so carelessly that it was half hanging off the table, dangerously close to a bucket of melting ice. Joseph recognized the portfolio. Not the specific item but the quality. It was the kind of leather binding used for closing documents, not greeting cards. Curiosity, or maybe a lifetime of looking for opportunities in the margins, made him pick it up. He opened it. He didn't laugh like Eva. He adjusted his glasses. He read. He saw the header, Deed of Trust. He saw the property description, 1422 Pacific Coast Highway, Malibu, California. The legal description of the villa. The home where he had raised his son. The home the bank had foreclosed on 90 days ago. His hands must have started to shake then. He flipped the page. He saw the purchase price, $5,500,000. Paid in full. Cash wire transfer. No mortgage. No lien. He flipped to page 4. The transfer of title. 4 months, Joseph had been negotiating with a shadowy entity known only as Apex Holdings LLC. An anonymous angel investor who had swooped in at the 11th hour, bought the toxic debt, and saved the company from a public filing that would have humiliated them all. He had never met the principal of Apex Holdings. All communication had gone through intermediaries and secure servers. He had pictured a shark in a suit, some Silicon Valley raider looking for a tax write-off. He looked at the signature line for the grantor, the owner of Apex Holdings LLC. It was signed in blue ink. A sharp, precise, familiar scrawl. Riley, surname. The air must have left his lungs. The boring sister-in-law. The woman Eva had mocked for her lack of style. The woman he had allowed his son to kick out of the venue like a stray dog. She wasn't just a lawyer. She was the buyer. She was Apex Holdings. She was the only reason he wasn't currently standing in a pile of rubble. He looked up, scanning the crowd, his face draining of color. He saw Eva across the room holding court, laughing with her influencers, completely oblivious that she had just thrown away the literal deed to their salvation because it didn't match her color palette. He looked back down at the document. And then he saw the timestamp on the email notification I had just triggered miles away. The digital voiding of the gift. The revocation. He realized then that I hadn't just bought the house. I had bought their dignity. And because they had treated me like garbage, I was taking it back. I was halfway through a cheeseburger at a roadside diner somewhere near Santa Cruz when my phone finally rang. It sat on the Formica table, vibrating against a plastic ketchup bottle. It was Joseph on the line, terrified. He had finally realized I was Apex Holdings, the buyer of their debt. Riley, he pleaded, if we lose the villa, we lose the company. Why are you doing this? We're family. We were family until you watched me get kicked out of the parking lot, I replied calmly. You thought I was insignificant. Eva snatched the phone, hysterical. Give it back. It's my wedding day. I'll let you sit at the head table, just bring the papers. She still thought she had leverage. Eva, I cut her off. Guests give gifts. Strangers don't. Since I wasn't a guest, you aren't the owner. The deal is void. I hung up and blocked them all. Their dynasty collapsed instantly. The investors at the wedding walked out and the perfect family imploded into insolvency and blame. They had built their lives on the appearance of wealth, not the reality of it. A month later, I sat with the director of the Women's Legal Defense Fund. Instead of funding Eva's vanity, the sale of the villa would now fund legal aid for trapped women for 7 years. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. I didn't burn their field, I just moved the seeds to where they would actually grow. They tried to bury me, forgetting I was a seed. Now I was finally free.